You would think I would have paid a little bit more close attention to the Showtime calendar clock. Actually did. Considering I set this up at 6:30.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you again for joining us for this week's edition of the Weekly Roundtable. I am one of the co-founders of the Liberty First Foundation and co-host of the show, Frank Johnson. To my immediate right is my good friend Rich from Jersey. He's going to be here to give us some of the layman's idea of what it's like to live in the hellhole that we know as
New Jersey,
the Garden State.
The armpit of the United States.
And of course, and to screen left, Michael Marshall, co-founder of the Liberty First Foundation. We're going to be joined shortly by Michael Vasquez, the Dragon of the Southern Tier. We have a couple of friends over here in the audience right now. It's been an interesting week thus far. There's just a few things I think we're gonna touch on. I know the one thing that I want to touch on is the company known as Liberty Safe. Doing the deed with the FBI in helping enforce a search warrant that they had no part in needing to have a part in, and how that makes us all feel about when we entrust our earthly possessions to a company that promises to help us keep things secure, and then without notice they hand over the access to third parties. And why exactly does that company have access to our stuff? I don't know. Well, I don't know if did you see what happened in the news with that, Mike?
No, I didn't.
Okay. The gist of it is this. You have a guy who is under investigation for his part of the January 6th debacle in Washington, D.C.
Okay.
Judge issued a search warrant for the man's house.
Okay.
The FBI goes to his house to, conduct their search warrant, and in the home, they find a gun safe made by the Liberty Safe Company.
Right. Oh, yes, I did hear about that.
So the FBI said, well, we need access to this safe. Apparently, the homeowner wasn't going to give him access to the safe. I don't know necessarily. I only read part of the warrant. Some of it that I read was already redacted. A search warrant is a very specific purview.
Yes, it is.
Very specific things that you're allowed to look for when it comes to a search warrant. And the search warrant is about the home. The home is to be searched.
Mm-hmm.
When you get a search warrant that's for a specific location, you're basically talking about what's within plain sight and what's easily accessible. If you have a search warrant that's dedicated to somebody's home, but it doesn't specify the garage, and you have an agent goes into the garage and pulls stuff out of there, and it's not in the purview of the warrant, anything that he finds in there is inadmissible. Well,
right.
One of the things the FBI found was a safe in the guy's house, and I don't know if the gentleman was home or not at the time that the FBI was conducting their search, but they did not have access to the safe. They couldn't get into it.
They should have been required to obtain another warrant specifically for that safe.
Right. Well, what happened was the FBI reached out to Liberty Safe and said, hey, we're conducting a search of this gentleman's house. He has one of your products in the house. We need access to it. So Liberty Safe looked in their records, looked up the serial number for the safe, and gave the FBI the backdoor electronic combination to open the safe. Now, we don't know what was gleaned from opening the safe. We don't know what was found. We don't know if there's anything incriminating or anything else. That's not the point of it. The point was that Liberty Safe, as a third party, not named in the warrant, granted access to the federal government, a man's safe with a combination that they should not have even been in possession of.
Well, exactly. Okay. And there's a lot of things that raise a shitload of red flags on this. Okay. First off, Liberty Safe really doesn't know who called them. Okay, yeah, they got a phone call claiming that it was an agent for the FBI.
Right. Well, Liberty Safe is saying that they were faxed or emailed a copy of the warrant. And now a fax or an email copy of a warrant doesn't necessarily mean anything, because when you have an actual warrant, it's stamped by the court.
Right.
There's an embossed stamp by the court. That's how you can tell that it's a verifiable document. That embossing is easily replicated on a fax or an email.
Right.
Now your printer does not print the embossing. It might print the shadow of it, but you can watermark a document and make it look like it was embossed. So how do we know? How does Liberty, to your point, how does Liberty Safe know that they're receiving an authentic document from an authentic agency, and maybe not just some guy who broke into the house?
Okay. Here, that was my first red flag. Is number one, Liberty Safe doesn't know who was calling them. Okay. And even if they got faxed or emailed a copy of the warrant, that is still not legally binding. Okay. The FBI, in order to do this correctly, should have had a warrant served directly to Liberty Safe. Okay. Naming Liberty Safe as having that information, and then so forth. Okay. Liberty Safe should have kept that information confidential. Without being served another warrant requesting that information, or a subpoena requesting that information. And even then, there would have to be some type of exculpatory evidence indicating that the evidence that was being sought after by the FBI was located in that safe.
Yeah, Rich, go ahead. You're saying
no, and then still, even if they got the warrant, they still don't have to comply. They still don't have to, give the information to the FBI. I don't believe so. Apple didn't do it when Obama requested that cell phone information be unlocked, basically, so the FBI can do whatever search they were doing. And so, Liberty Safe didn't have to comply, and it seemed like they complied kind of fast.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And here's another thing. Okay, I can't serve a search warrant on somebody's brain. Okay, so knowledge is not susceptible to warrants. Okay, you can be subjected to subpoena for your testimony. Okay, but beyond that, you really can't be required to state what you know.
Well, here's the thing. Liberty Safe is not even a service provider at this point.
Right.
They're a material provider.
Mm-hmm.
They provided an item. That's all it is an item. It would have been no different if the guy kept whatever they were looking for in a file cabinet that had a lock on it.
With a key.
With the key. They can't, and they say, oh, you have to give us the key. Listen, no, I'm not a suspect. If I'm Liberty Safe, I'm not a suspect in your investigation. I have nothing to do with your investigation. And the fact that this guy you think may or may not be keeping some sort of incriminating evidence in a product that we sell, we have nothing to do with it.
Right.
We do not have to comply with it. Your warrant is in the scope of the possessions of the subject of the warrant. It's to the subject of the warrant to decide whether or not he's going to be compelled to comply with the warrant or be held in contempt of the warrant. That's it. Liberty Safe
Mhm.
had absolutely no justification to provide anything for anybody. If I built my neighbor a house that, you know, I made so impenetrable that they couldn't break the door down, you know, and them saying, hey, we got a search warrant for your neighbor's house. We need you to open it up. You built the house. You need to open up. I don't have to do shit.
No, you don't.
I'm not a part of your investigation.
But that's what we're seeing here, and we're seeing this all too common, that all law enforcement across every level is abusing its authority.
Well, look, if they wanted to get into the safe, they could have gotten into the safe without Liberty Safe giving them the information.
Well, yeah, they could have.
These gun safes, if you anybody who owns one of these things, we have one. They're mostly a fire barrier. They're not a theft barrier. You can be into any one of these safes, no matter how quality they are, in under 10 minutes with nothing more than an angle grinder.
Yep.
Because you have an 1/8-inch plate steel on the outside. You have either concrete or gypsum board layered in between about an inch thick, and then an interior wall of an 1/8 inch of steel. You can get into one of these things. You don't need anybody's code. You don't need anything. You can be in and out.
Most
of one of
of the time, you can just drill out the lock.
Yeah, you can be in one of these things in no time. The locks are harder. Opening the door is the hard part. The best way to get into one of these safes is through the side. You bypass the front, you cut through the side, and you're in a no big deal.
Mm-hmm.
You cut from the top down into the side like an L. You chunk out a quarter of it, and you have complete access to everything inside of it. Takes you no more than 15, 20 minutes to do it. If the safe is within the scope of the warrant, they have every right to go in and get it because the judge said so. If they can't gain access, and then the guy who they're serving the warrant on says, I'm not letting you into my safe, and they can't gain access, now you're at a stalemate between the two factors, between your suspect and the FBI. You can't turn to the manufacturer of the safe and say, we need your compliance because our suspect is not complying. You cannot compel them to do anything. But the fact of the matter is, Liberty Safe, as Jan points out in the comments, Liberty Safe was taken over about 5 years ago by an investment group in New York City. The company was bought out. The investment group that bought out Liberty Safe is a left-wing investment group that has donated tens of hundreds of thousands of dollars to Democrat causes across the country. And I mean, we're talking about everything from Biden to Obama to Fetterman and all the rest of these. This is another company that rides the Second Amendment community for profit, but betrays the Second Amendment community at the drop of a hat.
Right.
And this is why people in our communities, this is why I'm always talking about, when I talk about different manufacturers, be careful where you spend your money. There's a well-known coffee company out there that makes millions of dollars every year selling coffee. And I see some of the most popular quote unquote gun influencers running around with their shirts on them, taking endorsement deals from this company, and this company donates their profits to the people that undermine the Second Amendment. Our community needs to do better in who we spend our monies with. And when you have this example, a blatant example of not only being anti-Second Amendment, but now anti-Constitution, because they've gone and now they've issued a statement saying, well, if you don't want that secret number on file with us, we're setting up a web page. You go in, you put your serial number of the safe in, and we'll eliminate our number from the database so we don't have access to it. So they've already tried to backpedal and try to control damage as much as they can.
Right.
But the cat's already out of the bag. Now where this goes as far as the judge is concerned, let's face it, I don't see a single person who's been indicted for January 6th activity is getting a fair shake from any judge.
No.
Thus far. They're all getting hung out to dry no matter what they do. So the judge is probably just going to let it slide anyway. But the warrant, the action, all of this was well beyond the scope of the investigation.
It was always meant to be.
Yeah. And this just happened to this just happened to leak out. Now, this is just one example. We don't have any idea how many other people have been investigated that Liberty Safe or other companies have decided to, acquiesce to an FBI raid request and give certain information. How many people's information from the cloud has Google given people? Without us finding out about it. How many banks have given information out without us knowing about it?
Yeah.
It's
Well,
a lot more prolific than we think. This is just one example that got brought to light.
Yeah,
It
but
should
that's
be.
what the FISA courts have been about. To be able to secretly go in and do these investigations behind our backs without being able to tell anyone.
Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, Michael Vasquez joining us from the Bronx.
Going on, Mike.
Hey, it's good to see you there. And it's the puppy was acting up, so we had to go out. Sorry about that.
That's all right. Now, what's Mike? You've been. I imagine you probably saw about this Liberty Safe thing.
A little bit about it, yeah.
A little bit. What's your take on it? As far are we on the right track or wrong track, or is the FBI once again overstepping?
Well, this has been part of a series of oversteps by the FBI. I mean, everything we've seen them do, from the 2000 investigations of parents because they're part of the PTA asking, what are you teaching my kids, to what we've seen with Enrique Tario, to what we're seeing with Liberty Safe. And on top of what we've seen them do with all of social media. We've seen, the Twitter files. We've seen the same thing is alleged in Facebook, over at Google as well. We do know for a fact that they have been colluding and working through their NGOs, through into all these social media, and being able to collect massive amounts of U.S. data. We know because of the FISA courts that the FBI has been making a duplicate of all U.S. keystrokes since, 2003, when they got the authorization to do that under the Patriot Act. So this isn't a surprise that we're seeing this. It is a surprise that it's coming out. And it's just yet another example that we haven't been paying attention to the government. And when you don't pay attention to the government, it will continue to reach until you do pay attention. Then they pull back a little bit and wait for you to forget again so they can keep going forward. This is a very troubling process. And this is just one example of it, as you mentioned. I'm not surprised.
Well, I remember it was about 6 months after the Boston bombing,
Mhm.
Boston Marathon bombing. There was a couple that were doing unrelated Google searches
Mhm.
for some of their own proclivities, some of their own hobbies. The husband and wife, they were hikers. They like going out there in the wilderness. They like doing stuff like that. And the wife is a chef. The husband goes home one day and he says, hey, we're going to go on a little hiking trip, a little camping trip, whatever. I'm going to get some new gear for us. He goes into Google and he searches for some backpacks. Wants to get a couple of backpacks for him and his wife. A couple days later, the wife goes on to Google and she says, hey, I saw this great recipe. I need a pressure cooker. And she went and she looked up a pressure cooker.
Oh, that was right after the New Jersey pressure cookers were found that they thought were improvised bombs.
Well, the Boston marathon bombings with pressure cooker bombs.
Right. And there was another one found in New Jersey right after that.
Right. But here's this couple that is doing completely innocuous Google searches to try and buy things that they need for their personal life. And within 24 hours, the FBI raids their house.
Well,
now,
go ahead.
Was the FBI looking for them specifically? Were they already being watched? Or were they watching an algorithm for anybody doing that kind of search? And it flagged, because if it's the latter, then they are watching everybody.
Yeah.
Because there's no way. unless you were watching them specifically, unless you had a warrant to surveil their internet traffic, and you thought that these people were domestic terrorists, then I could see them getting raided 24 hours later. But when these are just a husband and wife doing separate searches on separate days on separate computers, and all of a sudden the FBI is over there, these were probably the only two people in America that week that looked up backpacks and pressure cookers within a certain period of time, because they put a blanket over the entire internet looking for people doing copycats, copycats, which tells you that the Fed is looking at everybody.
Keywords on your search, coming from the same house. They kind of put the two together, and next thing you know, they're knocking on your door.
Well, no, they often do that. And I know for a fact, 17 years of doing research on all the stories that aren't the headline stories out there. And for people who follow my channel, I do deep dives. I do long form political commentary. So I'm looking at years of data, years of actions that may happen. So as in the case with the Boston bombings, which I remember the New Jersey bombings. Why? They weren't as popular. They weren't as popularized, but yet that was an event that was going on. I remember that. I've had the FBI, the NSA, the DOD have done several background searches on me, and I know I've been able to see the flag come up a couple of times where they've been actually tracking what I'm doing. And that's the problem. Because they have the FISA courts, this is directly a consequence of the Patriot Act, which, as Jan mentions, was just reauthorized. And we continue. It's going to be reauthorized every year forever. It might as well be law to be permanent, and because it's effectively always permanent. It's like everything else in the government. Once you pass it, it never goes away. And this is the ongoing consequence of that. And people haven't noticed yet that this is being used as a weapon against American citizens. Tario was arrested. He's been convicted of 22 years in jail. Did anything get burned down? No. Did anything get destroyed? A couple of windows and a door. Did anyone get killed? Yes, by the Capitol Police, 2 individuals at least, if not 3 to 4. But yet he's going to jail. He wasn't in the city. He never advocated for violence. There is no organization that was involved, and that's been proven by several studies. He was just black, not a Democrat, and someone who is questioning in the same way that Al Gore and Maxine Waters and Nancy Pelosi questioned elections in 2000 on the floor of Congress, which is their constitutional right and his constitutional right.
Well, 2016, they also did it.
Yes.
During the Bush v. Gore.
Yeah, that was 2000. That was 2000, and then 2016 with Hillary Clinton.
Okay. You see that sign that I have up there?
Yeah.
What's it say?
Yeah, that's the data center.
If you have nothing to hide, well, that's just ridiculous, right there. Full stop right there.
And this is actually from the NSA website.
Yeah, but it's the excuse to violate people's privacy.
That's not a Photoshop sign.
That is a legit sign. This is from the NSA. Okay. The website is nsa.gov1.info, Utah Data Center, Domestic Surveillance Directorate, defending our nation, securing the citizens.
All right. Well, now, what does the sign say on that monument outside? Because I don't know if everybody can read the fine print on that. It says,
"Welcome to the Utah Data Center. If you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to fear."
Right. And that's the excuse that's used to violate the Fourth Amendment rights of every American.
Well, that's Pelosi coming onto the House floor saying he has every right to come to court and prove his innocence.
That in reference to President Trump. Right.
This is not the edict of the United States.
It's not the Fourth Amendment. It's a violation of your right to privacy. It's a perversion of the Constitution, the restrictions on the government. Just because whether I have something to hide or not, whether I have it to hide from my wife, my girlfriend, my brother, my bank, my job, or anyone else under the sun except for God, is my choice. That's freedom. That's my privilege of being born, not just an American, but being born, because that's what the Constitution guarantees. My right by being born. Forget about what country I'm from. That is an innate natural right. So just whether I have something to hide or not is immaterial to the fact that the government doesn't have a right to find it. They don't have a right to look for it unless they have probable cause and a high order of probable cause. And they use these things like that image to pervert people and to make them think, well, it's okay because they're going to protect me. No, what you're doing there, when people do that, you're trading your freedom for the impression of security. You're giving yourself good feelings so that you can sleep at night, justifying what the government is doing against you, when in fact it is a perversion of the law, it is a violation of your rights, and it should keep you up at night, not put you to sleep.
Yeah, I mean, if you told somebody, listen, it's a dangerous world out there, get into this cage and I'll keep you safe, you wouldn't get into the fucking cage. But there are people out there that are allowing the cage to be built around them. They're not walking into the cage. They're letting the cage be built around them, and they're not saying anything about it. And that's what's scary. What was it when they first, remember 10 years ago, they were talking about, we're going to monitor every phone call made in the United States. We're not going to listen to the calls, but with every phone call that you make, we're going to know every call that you make, every phone number that you dial, we're going to know. And then they're going to use that to see, oh, well, what happens if I dial a wrong number? And I happen to call some guy who has got a manifesto out there. Now, all of a sudden, I'm going to get raided by the FBI because I dialed the wrong number. I had staunch right-wing conservatives telling me, well, what are you worried about? If you don't have anything to hide, what are you worried about?
So
it's not the point if I have anything to hide. It's none of your goddamn business what I do. Unless I'm doing something illegal and you can prove that I'm doing something illegal, you have no business looking into who I'm calling or what I'm doing or what I'm thinking or what I'm writing.
And that's the whole thing. Okay. So what I have highlighted here, okay, the NSA Bumble Hive is what it's called. It has the capability right now of scaling up to workloads of more than 100 petaflops or 100 trillion calculations each second.
Yeah. That's the backup of the internet and all transactions, all keystrokes that are happening in America.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, data center isn't just designed to keep secrets, it's called an incredible amount of info too. The Cray XC30 supercomputer, codenamed Cascade, is capable of scaling high-performance computing workloads of up to 100 petaflops, 100 trillion calculations per second. That means the data center can process more than just digital information. Its potential reaches far beyond that.
The problem with that is that they already have all the information. All you have to do is raise a red flag, and they can go back and search, what you did in the past as well as what you're doing right now. So they have all the information that they need to prosecute you without a warrant, without being very specific about it. Just kind of, it's out there in the open, and they're just collecting your data.
Well,
besides just collecting your data, okay, they're also actively listening for specific keywords, specific phrases, etc. Okay, and anytime, and that's all programmed in. Anytime any of those come up, it is flagged for further investigation.
Well, they're constantly doing those investigations, but here's the thing: to make it make sense for the average person out there, because this sounds beyond most people. Petabytes. What's a petabyte? What's a trillion bytes of information? They have no way to follow that. Let me make it easy for people. Most people, I think, in the world have seen or at least know of the movie Seven. We've all seen it with Morgan Freeman and Brad Pitt. Fantastic. Good movie. Really well done movie. There's a key scene in that movie I want people to think of. That scene is when Morgan Freeman says, okay, I'm going to go over to his contact in the federal government. He's going to look up all the library searches of several books so that they could try and find the serial killer. And Brad Pitt goes, but isn't that illegal? He goes, yes, it's illegal. But we can't use this in court. But it will give us a lead that we can then follow up on. Completely illegal. Absolutely something that he knows the government has access to. And they used it and they did. People look at that and go, well, that's Hollywood. No, that's real life. Where do you think the inspiration came from? The inspiration came from the fact that our government has this information, and they won't prosecute you because 3 years ago and 2 years ago and 1 year ago and 1 month ago, you hit flags. No, what they do is they have a file so that when they do find a reason to then investigate you, they already know where to look. And the key about that is they're creating new ways, new reasons to go and investigate you. Oh, you're MAGA. Well, MAGA must be bad. MAGA is like a terrorist. That's according to Joe Biden. If you listen to him, that's extremism. That's obviously white nationalism, like Enrique Tarrio, who is obviously a white nationalist. Just look at his permanent suntan. Just look at it. Listen to his name. Doesn't that sound Germanic to you? Of course it does. So he must be a white nationalist, and they go after him. No, it was that Enrique, and I'm using him as the example, again, modern day, so everyone can understand this. Enrique's problem is that he was a Proud Boy, which they said that is not democratic. They're going out and creating riots, not like Antifa, but against Antifa. He happened to be Black and Hispanic, but not a Democrat. He was vocal, he was well liked, and he was followed. He didn't break the law, so they needed some way to get him. So now they went backwards. This is how they got a copy, talking about what you were saying before, Frank. How did they track him down? They got his encrypted. He's on an encrypted data system, which is perfectly legal. Everyone can do it if you want. He's in an encrypted private messaging board. And he got a message on January 6th from someone that said, hey, they're going in. He didn't say, yes, go do that. He didn't say, oh, have some violence. He didn't even respond. But because he got the text, he's guilty. How did the government even find out? How did they break the encryption? It had to be given to them. And this is how they get us, because they're changing the terminology. This is McCarthyism, where you're guilty. We just have to find a way to prove it. We just need some excuse.
Show me the man, and I'll show you the crime.
That's correct. Mm-hmm.
That's what it's coming down to. It is. Look, it's so out of control, and I think if people actually realize exactly how much was going on, I keep saying, people would freak out, and I gotta keep remembering they're not going to do anything. The people won't do a damn thing anyway.
Well,
they're just that's government, can't fight City Hall.
Well, there's a reason for that, and someone brought that up last week on my live stream, my Sunday live stream, and said, well, it's when people get to the critical mass. I've been hearing that a lot lately. We're going to hit critical mass. And here's the thing. We're not going to hit critical mass. America is made up of people from everywhere in the world, every culture, every religion, every ideology. We are the single biggest mix of the world. And because of that, we have all these different groups hitting whatever is their critical mass at different times. And because they can't get any action because there's not a groundswell, then we see them getting deflated. They get diffused. And part of that is because of equity. It's one of the reasons why they use equity so much. It's an increase of the different categories of human beings in America. that are being pitted against each other. So as each group reaches that critical mass, there's another group in the equity hierarchy that is pitted against them to then use up all that energy. So it never reaches a critical mass with all the other groups that would actually affect a change in our government. It's psychology, mass psychology, using government to be able to maintain control. Everyone's infighting so much that they're not able to fight the external threat or what is the real threat to everyone. So it's very interesting when you think about it. And once you realize that, it really scares me about what the future holds, because look at what they're doing. I mean, that's what we have this DEI for.
And you want to know what's funny about what you say, that there's a flip side to that too. Because when you look at all the people that should be being upset about all of these things, and you say each one of our groups, we're all ideologically similar, but we have our passion in something different. You know, conservatives might have their passion in gun rights. They might have their passion in free speech. They might have their passion in this, that, whatever. Now, I am the self-described gun guy of the group. Okay, I'm the guy who's all about guns. Vass, you're the guy who's all about freedom of speech, freedom of press. Marshall's the guy who's all about Constitution. The things that rile you guys up more don't necessarily rile me up as much. And what riles me up as much might not rile you guys up as much, because it doesn't hit directly to home for you guys. It hits you close to your bullseye, but it doesn't hit your bullseye right on. Same thing with me. And like you said, we as different groups will reach our critical mass at one time, but because we don't know how to have the right side of the aisle formulate a plan where we understand that if it hurts you, it hurts all of us. Everybody on our side is like, if it hurts me, it hurts me. They don't think about if it hurts me, it hurts all of us. The left, on the other hand, look at that flag, that inclusion flag. Why would the ABC, LGB, whatever, all of these different alphabets and everything else like that, why would they feel that it would be necessary to incorporate into their ranks all people that they feel are marginalized, and not just people that are marginalized based on sexuality? They talk about gay, lesbian, transgender, this, that, and everything else. Why are they making blacks and Hispanics part of their group? Because they are trying to rally all of it under one umbrella. They try to rally all of it under umbrella. Well, if you're against transgender, then you must also be racist. If you're against, this minority, well, you must be homophobic. If you're against, so they try to bring all of them, and they do a pretty successful job at rallying their base under one flag that has so many colors that they have nothing to do with one another to begin with, except the fact that they can rally them at the same time. We have one flag, our side. It's red, white, and blue. We have one flag. That's the red, white, and blue flag. But we can't seem to rally all of our passions under that one flag and get pissed off all at the same time, where we can have as much of an impact as the people under that rainbow flag do.
Because we can't talk. Think about it. Social media is busy trying to isolate people and tell you, well, you're the only one with that complaint.
Even before that, Michael.
Yeah.
Even before that. Okay. Even before really the internet. Okay. We do have a very hard time. People that are actually constitutional have a very hard time coming together and organizing. Okay, and part of it is out of fear. I'll point blank say it. It's because of fear. They are afraid that they are going to get locked under the jail, and we are seeing that happen with the January 6th stuff.
Yeah. We're supposed to be afraid. Again, it goes to this is
Okay. The government doesn't see the LGBTQIA group as a threat to them. Okay,
No,
because
they're an
they
ally.
are wanting to hold the government accountable. The constitutionalists, the Second Amendment community, the freedom of speech community, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, all want government to be held within their confines. LGBTQ is actually encouraging the government to exceed its confines.
they think it's an advantage to them.
Right, and that's why they're able to rally all of their causes. They can rally under that one umbrella, and all of us, we wind up segmenting ourselves into defeatable
Because
groups.
we're scared.
Well, because we don't stand with each other.
No,
That's-
we're scared.
Well, that's part of the reason. Yeah.
That's 95% of it.
I wouldn't go that high, but yeah,
I will.
no, I think there's, and people have a reason to be scared. It's not just a fear that's baseless. We're seeing,
No, I'm not saying it's baseless. I'm saying it's actually a legitimate fear.
yeah,
Okay, because like I also said, it's being proven right now with the January 6th ordeal.
Well,
It was proven with Edward Snowden.
So then what's the solution? I mean, we're having these conversations and we're trying to kind of,
We need to have these conversations, but we also need to grow a set of balls.
well, Rick, to answer your question in a slightly different way, is there's a couple of things. It always comes back to, I believe, we have to go out and vote. We have to be involved. We have to, one, be knowledgeable. People have to stop watching the, I don't know, what is it? I'm dating my mom, housewives, or wherever. The stupid crap that's there to totally just suck your time away, time sinks, and just make you brain dead. We need to stop some of that. Actually follow the news and find out what's going on and then act on it. And when I say act on it, it's as simple as get in touch with your elected representatives, hold them accountable, ask them why they did what they did or why they didn't do what you wanted them to do. You have to be up speaking about this. You have to be out voting and registering people to vote. And more importantly, when it comes time for a petition, for petitions to get people onto the ballot, that you're involved in getting those people on to convince people to run and to be involved. It's self-accountability. If we're not doing those steps, then the only people who do are the ones who are out for themselves, who are taking advantage of the system. And that's how we get the abuse. So the answer is very simply, Americans just have to exercise their rights and do that without the question of, gee, but what will someone else think? Who cares? I don't care what someone else thinks. There's always that saying, or they try and say now, well, this could offend someone. I don't care if I offend you. That's your problem, not mine. You have your feelings. Fantastic. I have my own. I don't need yours. And there's no reason why your feelings supersede my feelings. So you can have whatever feeling you want to have. It's meaningless to me because I have my own. And there is no superiority or hierarchy. Well, I'm LGBTQ. I don't care. That's your choice. That's your life. It's got nothing to do with me. It doesn't make you more important or somehow supersede what I want to do with my life. And we keep forgetting that. And as long as we keep living like that's the way it should be, we're going to be in a system of abuse. Does that make sense, Rick?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay. Now, part of that is, and when I say we have to pay attention to what's going on, let me be clear about that too, because it's kind of what you're talking about here, Frank. And let me explain, or let me show you guys what I mean here. Hang on, I haven't tried to do this before. Hang on, I haven't done this with this system before.
Fast is getting technical.
Yeah. How do I get? I want to show a stupid page. How do I do that with this system? Oh, there it is. Never mind. Hang on. Okay. So, by the way, this story came out. You have to go overseas to see it. The story came out. It was dropped the same day. This story came out 2 days ago. And what you'll see there is it came out first thing in the morning. By noon, the story was dead in America. By noon, this story was gone. You have not heard anyone talk about this. 61 individuals have been they're indicted, they've been arrested for domestic terrorism, which was what happened in Atlanta this year, 2023. Remember when we had the riots in Atlanta? That was in January, where Antifa went into the city of Atlanta, attacked the police stations. They had riots in the streets. There was an arson. That was followed up in March with the attack on Cop City. 200 individuals, many of them almost all of them were not from Georgia, most of them from other states, several of them from other countries, were involved in attacking a police station that was there to train the police, the fire department, and EMTs how to better serve the people of Atlanta. That includes training on how to deal with individuals personally, as well as techniques to save lives. And they wanted to burn that to the ground. Remember, they were throwing the firecrackers and rocks. It was a whole standoff. They set arson. They were burning things down. Domestic terrorism. 61 individuals were arrested. This isn't news. This came out on the same day that Enrique Tarrio was sentenced to 22 years. Enrique Tarrio, who received a text, 61 people, arson, riots, attacks against both the police and individuals. Which one sounds more dangerous to you? The autonomous zone that breaks every local, state, and federal law, or this guy getting a text? We're not supposed to have a conversation, and people are not supposed to remember what happened in January or in March. They're not supposed to remember that Antifa is a domestic terrorist organization. They're not supposed to remember that people are being imported from other countries to come into our cities to burn them down, just like they did in Minneapolis. We're not supposed to have this conversation because we're the bad guys for pointing out that these people are being arrested for, not all of them, some of them are being arrested for domestic terrorism, which is a fact. You can't argue this. They went into a city and they attacked it. They attacked the people. They attacked the law enforcement. They broke every law known in this country. But we can't talk about that, and that's not news. There's a problem.
Well, it's hard to talk about it when the current sitting vice president of the United States is one of the people who helped organize GoFundMe so these people could have bail posted.
Yeah. I hate to interrupt this, okay, because I want to go back to something that we were just talking about how we're literally afraid. Let me show you. This is a poll done by the Cato Institute. Okay. Staunch liberals stand out as the only group who feels they can share their political opinions.
Yeah, that's from 2022. I remember that. I remember when it came out.
It's worse now. Okay. Conservatives, 77% agree that they can't say what they want to say because of somebody might find it offensive.
Yeah. The only people who feel like they can say anything they want to are the progressives. The furthest left, the further left you go, the more free you feel about saying anything that you want to, because that's the approved message, which brings us to McCarthyism, brings us to an authoritative state.
Well, maybe we need to coin the phrase progressive privilege.
Well, maybe there is a lot of it. Yes.
Maybe that's a phrase that we need to coin because I've never heard anybody use that before. progressive privilege.
I like that.
Okay, Republicans with most education are the most worried political views could harm them at work. And I've actually had this happen.
Well, it's not a surprise to me. Again, we've seen this study. Now it's 2 years in a row. We've seen this, and everyone knows this. We've seen this. You can go to dating profiles and you'll see this. It's very clear because we've had the president come out and demonize people. You didn't get the jab. You're evil. Oh, you're MAGA, so you're evil. What does MAGA mean? Why did they stop? Why do they use the acronym MAGA? Because saying "Make America Great" is an inherently positive statement. I don't care if you're on the left or the right or in between. Making America great is something we all should want to do. And anyone who says, I don't want to make America great, you need to stop and think about what you just said. Why wouldn't you want your home country to be great? You could say, I want to make Britain great. I want to make France great. I want to make Australia great.
Well, here's the thing, okay, and we've seen this. We saw it under the Tea Party, where our government agencies have literally been weaponized against anybody talking out. Okay, the IRS was weaponized against the Tea Party. We're seeing that happening again. We saw the NSA and FISA courts weaponized against Trump and his supporters. We're seeing weaponization against anybody that even said anything about January 6th. And we're seeing it at against anybody that had anything negative to say about the COVID response. We're seeing weaponization of our government against parents taking stands at school board meetings. Okay, we are literally have an extreme reason for being fearful of our government, because if we dare to say anything that they find contrary to their agendas, they're going to send everything after us.
Well, you know why they don't use the acronym of, Make America Great Again? It's because of this.
I believe that together we can make America great again. I believe that together we can make America great again.
No one remembers 1991.
There's good reason. Well, no, you see, they don't. It's not that they have to remember 1991. It's because if they say it, then it gives somebody the ability to bring it up, and then you have to rehash it. And they want to make sure that you forget the past, so that they could repeat it.
Yes.
Yeah. It's insidious the way these things are being done and how they're being used against us. And again, like Rick had asked, but what's the solution? And again, the solution is to step forward anyway, to be the people who are actually saying, no, I'm not running away. I'm not going to cower in fear. I'm not going to hold my head down and just be silent and hope you pass me by. You have to stand up and be heard.
Here's the thing, is we do have to quit being afraid of what's going to happen. Okay, because honestly, if we don't start saying stuff, and even if we are arrested and put under the jail, we need to show literally what's going on. Okay, the people that founded this country didn't sit there idly by. They were fearful that British troops are going to come in and yank them from their homes, and arrest them. Okay, they lived in constant fear. That's one of the reasons why the Sons of Liberty tried to keep their leaders, keep it unknown who their actual leaders were.
Yeah, but that's Mike. That's maybe too far away from people to even realize. See, for the United States, we stood up even in the face of that evil. We did that in 1945, World War One, World War Two. We were up, standing in front of the face of evil to make the world a better place. What happens when people don't? And that's the thing that people don't have the contrast because they assume, well, we're always doing it. No. Well, you get Venezuela, you get Cuba, North Korea, China, you get current day Russia. What's happening with the Ukraine? A great example. The Ukrainians could have kept their heads down and said, well, this will pass. And if I'm just really quiet, it'll blow past me and I'll be okay. No time in the history of mankind have people sat back and said, I'll just stay out of this and it'll be okay. It'll get better. It never gets better. You either have to confront, well, you always have to confront the challenge and you either win or you lose. That's true for cancer. That's true for politics. There is no aspect of human life where you can just sit back and say, I won't do anything. It'll be okay. And it will be. No, it never is okay if you just sit back and do nothing.
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing. Regardless of what may happen to us, if we don't start taking a stand, we are going to find out that we're going to have nothing left to stand for. We are quickly on our way. And you can see it on the attacks on the First Amendment. You can see it on the attacks of religious freedom. You can see it on attacks with freedom of the press. You can see it with attacks on certain freedom of petition. Okay.
Second Amendment, too.
Mm-hmm. And freedom of assembly.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Well, we got,
What's that?
well, if we want to, I'm just getting something coming in. Pete just sent me a text about something, a little bit of breaking news here. New Mexico Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham on Friday issued an emergency order suspending the right to carry firearms in public.
I saw that.
Albuquerque and surrounding county for the next 30 days amid a spat of gun violence. So if you live in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and you're afraid of being shot,
You can't protect yourself.
make sure you leave your fucking gun at home. Because nothing attracts the ability to get shot quite like the ability to defend yourself. Is this woman out of her well, she's a Democrat, so there's the answer. My question was, is she out of her mind? And yes, she's a Democrat. Said she's expecting legal challenges, but felt compelled to act. She was compelled to act, to do something. She was
Here's the question, and I'm
Criminals
just
are gonna leave their guns at home. You know, they're not gonna come out with their guns. They're gonna leave it at home because they're not allowed to. And
Well,
30 days will turn into 60 days to 90 days, and then the regular citizen won't be able to carry a gun anymore, and only criminals would.
Well, I'm sure the people that will pull on the trigger.
No, don't you understand? The criminals are going to follow these laws.
Well, obviously they were following the law when they killed the 11-year-old kid that she's talking about in here. They were so concerned about following the law that they killed an 11-year-old. So naturally, they're going to follow the law now. They're going to follow this edict, this emergency proclamation, this executive order. And then, oh, wait, we can't kill nobody?
They're going to follow the royal decree.
Well, here's the thing
Well,
that
you
I'm.
still can kill them now with guns, though.
Well, here's the thing that I'm trying to, and I'm looking at the article that came from. This is K. What is this? This is coming from KRQE, which is local Albuquerque, New Mexico news. And when you're
I
looking
knew I
at
should have took that right at Albuquerque.
Albuquerque, yeah. When you're looking at the news on this, when you're seeing the stories, not once is any reporter asking, nor is the governor offering law-abiding citizens with concealed carry, open carry, that they're the cause of the crime, that they're the ones who are causing the gun violence. And this is very similar to when we heard Kathy Hochul of New York, when she was asked the one time by CBS News, when she said, oh, we have to get rid of the concealed carry, we have to restrict that everywhere in New York State where other human beings might possibly be. What are the numbers? Is there been an increase in concealed carry holders committing crimes? And she goes, well, we don't need that data. It doesn't matter. Well, that is the heart of it, because just as we've just said, criminals don't care. They weren't following the law in the first place. They weren't abiding by any of the rules in the first place. Your problem isn't the law-abiding citizens. And we need to confront our leaders, our elected officials, and ask them, if you can't justify this, show me the data that says these are law-abiding citizens who have done this. If you can't, then you can't tell me I can't protect myself from the criminals.
Well,
Self-defense.
here is
I just love how this governor come out and makes this statement on a stage, flanked by all the top law enforcement officials of the state, all of which are carrying guns. She's protected by guns. She lives in a mansion that's patrolled by security that have guns. She has an armored escort wherever she goes. They have guns. But because there's been a bunch of criminals in Albuquerque who have decided that the best way to handle a problem is by killing your opposition, that she demands that the rest of the citizens of Albuquerque submit to her will and submit to the will of the criminal element and volunteer their civil rights, their God-given constitutional civil rights. So I guess the next time if there's a spat of arguments where people start being insulted in Albuquerque, she's going to tell people that they're not allowed to talk for 30 days. You won't be allowed to read for 30 days. You won't be able to watch TV for 30 days because something might insult you. You might have your feelings hurt. So we need to suspend the right to free speech. What a piece of shit.
okay. Here is how secure these politicians are that their gun laws are actually constitutional. Governor Newsom actually introduced legislation or resolution calling for a constitutional amendment. Okay, in this constitutional amendment, let me change. Governor Newsom proposes historic 28th Amendment to the United States Constitution to end Americans' gun violence crisis. And in this amendment, he is calling for raising the federal minimum wage to purchase firearm from 18 to 21, mandating universal background checks to prevent truly dangerous people from purchasing a gun that could be used in a crime.
That's already mandated. It's already a requirement.
Instituting a reasonable waiting period for all gun purchases and barring civilian purchase of assault weapons that serve no other purpose than to kill as many people as possible in a short amount of time. Weapons of war our nation's founders never foresaw.
Yeah, it is absolutely and insanely illegal. These are direct violations. You're telling people they can't defend themselves. You're
Right.
telling people. Go ahead.
And like every other time that they encroach on our freedom, somebody on our side now has to muster the funds, garner the support, go to court, file, cost all kinds of friggin' money, let it work through the court system so that we can get our friggin' rights back, and they don't lose anything. They don't lose anything. They're able to keep abusing people without ever having a friggin' penalty to pay. We wind up having to constantly pay out of the ass to ensure that our rights are respected because some asshole politician decides they know better. They don't pay a price for this, and we have to figure out a way other than at the ballot box that these people get held accountable for infringing on our rights.
I have a problem with that. In that,
I don't.
well, because there's no system I can think of saying, "Oh, this is a dumb law or a bad law." That's what the Supreme Court's for. That's what the courts are ideally for.
No,
Because
no.
if you say I can't try this law, then you're potentially
No. See,
missing something.
here's where you're wrong, Michael. And I'm gonna say this delicately and gently because
Don't. You said I'm
no,
gonna, I got
I'm
Don't
not
worry
saying
about
this because I want to hurt your feelings. I'm gonna when you have an elected official,
Yeah.
they run for office, they put their hand on that Bible or they attest on whatever book they want to attest
Mhm.
that they're going to swear to uphold the Constitution of the United States.
Right.
Every law that these people try to enact should pass constitutional muster before they introduce it. They should know before they introduce a law, hey, we know we're going to get legal challenges on it. Then why are you trying to pass it? If you know that it's going to get challenged on constitutional merit, you know that the people aren't going to like it. You know it's violating people's rights. You don't introduce the legislation. Your job is to act within the scope of the Constitution and not beyond it. And every one of these people that keeps introducing these laws that they know will go, oh, well, we'll just let the courts decide. No, the courts already decided it. The founding fathers already decided it. And you should know better before you waste the taxpayers' money and you take people's rights away from them every time you introduce a law that you know is going to get overturned at some point. You're costing people's lives. You're costing them money. You're causing all kinds of turmoil, and you're in dereliction of your duty. Don't try to pass laws that you know are going to get overturned, that you know are going to get challenged. Your job is to uphold the Constitution, not try to subvert it.
And while I agree with you on that, I do not want to put in place, I wouldn't want to see a system put in place that could potentially block something that would benefit people. I can't imagine that example right now.
Because
But-
there is no example.
I
There
don't,
is no law. You cannot pass a law in this country that is going to benefit people. The only thing you can do in this country that will benefit people is to repeal existing laws that harm people. The best way to help people is to leave them the hell alone and let them act within the accordance of freedom. That's the best way to help people. You can't pass laws that are going to guarantee equality. You can't pass laws that guarantee equity. You can't pass laws that guarantee safety or freedom or anything. The only thing that you could do is prevent people from trying to do those things to other people. And that's by repealing the laws that these people have enacted already. You want to do your job and uphold the Constitution? Take the laws off the book that infringe upon them. Stop trying to take people's rights away from them. That's your job. That is your job. That you're supposed to represent the people, not rule them.
And here's the other thing. And I've said this on here before.
God damn it.
Our elected representatives' primary responsibility is the protection of the rights of their constituents. Okay.
Yeah.
Their primary responsibility isn't to pass laws. Their primary responsibility is the protection of our rights. Okay. That is literally what is meant by support and defend the Constitution of the United States.
Yeah.
Okay. There is a very good reason why the framers of the Constitution wrote the Constitution the way they did.
I agree.
Okay. They wrote it as a positive rights document, i.e., meaning that it is a document that grants authority to the government, and it grants only specific areas of authority to the government.
Yeah. It's a document of negative rights. Negative rights to
No,
the government.
positive rights.
No, I mean negative rights to the government. It's restrictive against government, not people.
No, if you read the Constitution, not the amendments, the Constitution, where in that document does it forbid the federal government?
By its enactment, it is a restriction against it. It is asserting the rights.
No, Michael, listen to me.
I understand what you're saying.
It nowhere in that document does it say
No.
that anything
doesn't
is
say that.
forbidden from government. What it says is these powers and only these powers are granted to government. It is
Right.
not a negative rights document. It is a positive rights document.
No.
And if anything outside of those rights that are granted or the authority that's granted to the government, if it falls outside of those, it is not allowed.
Right. And that's considered.
Period. That
Right.
is not a negative rights document.
No. That's considered a negative rights
No,
document.
it's not. A
Again,
negative
guys,
rights document is when you are specifically told that you cannot do something.
If you are
listen, guys,
limiting,
you're looking at the number 6 and the number 9
yeah,
from different ends of it.
Yeah.
You're playing the semantic game, and it's not getting us anywhere.
Yeah.
Semantics don't get us anywhere. We can both call the same thing, the same thing by two different names, and it's still the same thing. It doesn't mean anything. The fact of the matter is, you have people that are constantly pushing laws that are
Subvert the Constitution.
subvert the Constitution. Any other employment, any other job that you could think of, if you did your job wrong, you get fired.
yes,
If you're a boxer and you hit the other guy below the belt too many times, you get disqualified. If you,
Yes.
any sporting event, if you break the rules, you're disqualified. Any job you have, if you don't do the job the way you were hired to do, you get fired. And in some cases, you'll get fined and penalized for what you do. If you're a stockbroker and you break the law, you're going to get penalized financially. There is never a price paid by these people that say they're there to uphold our constitutional rights and protect our rights from all enemies, foreign and domestic, and then they turn around and they act like enemies. They're never held accountable. Why should they be only held accountable at the ballot box? At the end, so, we're giving you 2 years to fuck shit up, or we're giving you 4 years, or we're giving you 6 years. But as long as but we'll hold you accountable at the end of the term. Why are you not held accountable now? Oh, wait, you want to take away my right to free speech. You just violated your oath. You're fired. You're out. Why do governors have lieutenant governors? Why do presidents have vice presidents? There's always a backup in case somebody drops dead or gets indicted in office. Why are there no mechanisms for these people to get held accountable? If we can't fire them, say, you're going to take away our rights? Okay, well, guess what? We're suing you personally, and you're going to pay.
because they'll wind up. It will be abused. That kind of political system will be abused.
Then you know what? Let it. Let it be abused. You know why we should let that system go and then let it be abused? Because the longer we take these politicians and tie their friggin' hands in civil suits every single day that they can't go to Washington and create more debates and create more laws, the country will run a shitload smoother because that's less damage they'll be able to do to us.
That is an argument.
A government that governs least governs best. Tell
I
me why
agree.
the Constitution can fit into you can fit the entirety of the Constitution into a matchbook size pamphlet, but we have 67,000 gun laws. How is it possible that you have so many laws and all of them fall within the confines of the Constitution? 99% of laws don't get challenged, and I guarantee you 99% of them are unconstitutional.
Oh, absolutely.
And they
Absolutely.
don't get challenged.
Okay.
Oh, well,
And
we
we
lock
used to
up
do
the
a segment. We used to do a segment where we would randomly pick a law that is in the U.S. Code and read through it and determine whether or not it was constitutional. And every one of the laws that we picked when we were doing that segment was unconstitutional.
Well, we just had the mayor of Oklahoma City come out and say, you know what? We're banning the sale of semi-automatic rifles in Oklahoma City. Oh, yay, we're doing something. Yay, we're doing something. Forget about whether or not it's constitutional. Forget about whether or not that it violates people's individual rights. Forget about anything. It doesn't matter. It
Forget
doesn't
if
matter.
it's-
Ooh, we're doing something. This
Yeah.
jerk off in Albuquerque pulling this crap. Ooh, it does.
Yeah, it's not effective. They can't even claim it's effective. That's the worst of it all.
Look, they don't care how much they pass, and they don't care how much they clog up the court system with our appeals and our lawsuits and our money, because they use our money against us in court to take our rights away.
I want to talk about an example, a specific example of how government exceeding its authority actually caused real damage to this country.
Patriot Act.
No, it's something that everybody would think was a lot more benign than what it actually turned out to be.
There could be a lot of things, but which one are you talking about?
Okay. Most people, if you're on social media at all, have seen posts about how rent and housing has become so unaffordable.
Oh, rent stabilization.
No. I'm getting to it. Okay. I'm building up to it.
Okay.
Okay. In a lot of these posts, you will see some of them that will come out and say, back in the day, back in the boomer generation or Gen X era, a single income family could afford to buy a house. Not true today. And what they've generally tried to do is they try to make it look like the ultra rich are the reason behind all this, and how them keeping the employees as slaves and exploiting them is the cause for all of this.
Okay.
And how landlords are just driving up the prices of rental properties and so forth just so that they can make a quick buck.
There's so many problems with that argument. There are so
Okay.
many holes in it.
Bill Clinton, the wonderful guy that was going to make America great again, instituted a housing program
Oh,
shortly
yeah.
after he was elected.
subprime.
Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac.
Yep.
Okay, and several other governmental system programs to help people with buying houses. And he artificially stimulated the housing market. And at that time, quote unquote, It was a record number of new home ownerships, and as a record percentage of the United States that owned their own homes. Well, right towards the end of his presidency, or shortly after the end of his presidency, we saw the housing bubble collapse. We saw untold amounts of foreclosures happening because people could no longer afford to pay the rent on their homes.
Yeah.
What we also saw was a bunch of people going around buying up these properties for pennies on the dollar.
BlackRock. Yeah.
Okay, BlackRock and other
And
organizations.
others too. Yeah.
And then turning them into rentals or developments or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So what we have happening now isn't from greed of big multinational corporations or any of that other shit that everybody claims aren't paying their taxes and so forth. What we're seeing is a direct result of government interference in an area that never should have done anything to begin with. Okay, and because of that government action, it artificially inflated the housing market. It caused a rapid buy in the housing market, which in turn resulted in a collapse of the housing market in the results of foreclosures, which allowed a bunch of individuals to be able to buy up all these properties to start renting them or tearing them down for other developments.
All right. So
And that is why we are now seeing a housing crisis today.
let me run through that for people who are not familiar with this. We're talking, I believe it was in the 1986 or was it 88 legislation that came through. Charles Rangel was one of the people supporting it to change the financing for minorities. And it was considered the subprime loans specifically. They created the category of subprime loans so that more minorities and poor individuals would be able to buy a home, which did not take into account what happens after 3 decades. The reason why it blew up in 2008, matter of fact, it was 1988. The reason why it blew up in 2008 is that's the end of a 30-year mortgage. We saw that at the end of the 30-year mortgage cycle, the poor people who couldn't afford a home still couldn't afford the home, and they lost their homes. That's why we had the mortgages. But between 88 and 2008, they drove up the entire housing market, artificially inflated it, because now poor people were getting houses because banks were required to give them the loans that they were unqualified for, and they were buying houses, and so demand increased price, elevated the prices artificially, and then we saw that continue. 2008, the reason why we had the Great Recession, as they like to call it, under the Obama period, was in fact the net result of what the Democrats had done to create that bubble and create that problem. It was just a 3-decade-long bubble, and they were confident people would forget what was the original cause. So they blamed it on Bush. No, it came from 1988. That cycle started the new cycle where we started seeing companies with all these houses that were foreclosed on, where we had city upon city upon city that had 10, 20, 30% of its housing now being abandoned. In came the companies like BlackRock, and there were others that would come in and say, okay, we'll take over those properties, maintain those properties so they're not all abandoned, and there's some kind of taxing coming in. And they decided to convert them all into rental properties, which then created a new bubble of the appreciation of the value, which we're seeing in New York City and many other places, where every private home has now been turned into 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 rentals, but the prices were all elevated, so the rents went up. And that's not even counting the fact that we've had inflation throughout this entire period, which has been decimating poor people on top of everything else that's going on. So when we look at it in real world, people, they don't think of it. So you have 88 SBA, the subprime loans, which leads to the Great Recession, which leads to the Great Rental Crisis, which we are in right now, with inflation punishing people all the way through. That's the way people need to envision it, and it makes sense for them. And they'll be able to key. These are the key moments.
Well, here's the other thing that ended up happening, too. All these families that were buying all these homes that could no longer afford them, and the houses that they were being foreclosed on, now we're in the rental market.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, not all those properties ended up getting turned into rentals.
No.
A lot of those properties ended up turning into businesses, factories, whatnot. Okay. Which again caused a shortage in the rental market. There was already a shortage because all these properties were bought up in the housing market. So now we have two shortages, one in the rental market, one in the housing market. That's what's causing all these prices to go up.
Well, would it interest you guys to know that if you actually look at a cost analysis of 1929 versus 2023,
Mm-hmm.
that when you compare average wages, average vehicle costs, average home ownership, average rent, average utility bills,
1923.
we are financially worse now
Mm-hmm.
as individuals than we were at the height of the Great Depression.
Yes.
Mhm.
Makes perfect sense.
If you look at the numbers,
Mhm.
during the Great Depression, you could buy a house for the equivalent of what was 5 years of your average salary. You could, if that was within your means, 5 years of your salary, you could find a home in your area that you wanted to live in. That would be the equivalent of 5 years of your average salary. Now, it's 10 years of your salary is what your median home is going to be. That they'll tell you could afford. Your car, Henry Ford said, "No man will work in my factory and not be able to afford to buy what he produces." 4 years ago, the average car price in America, adjusted for inflation, was 47% less expensive than it is now. And we haven't had that many expenses in technology where you could justify a 47% increase in the cost of a vehicle. I mean, yeah, we have a couple of little techno gadgets and stuff like that, but 47% of an increase? Our system is so completely upside down and screwed up right now that if you told people, people lived better in the Depression, had more money saved in the bank well, if they kept them actually in the mattress. People didn't want to keep their money in the bank during the Depression because we know what the banking looked like. But people were able to feed their family. We have the images of the Great Depression and what it looked like. We all see the food lines, we see the rationing, we see everything. That's all still going on today to a greater extent, except it's more hidden today. It's more hidden. Rather than you going to wait online for the food, a little card comes in the mail that you get a balance on, and you go shopping right where everybody else goes shopping.
There's still the food lines. I can tell you twice a week, 1 block away from me in the Bronx, there's a church. They have a food bank twice a week.
They have the food banks, they have the food pantries, they have all of that stuff. But it's in the Great Depression, there wasn't we're going to deliver your shit to your house so nobody, sees it. There was, everything had to be out in the open because there weren't the amenities that we have today. So the hardships were born on people's sleeves. You saw it firsthand because there was no mechanism in which to hide it. There are so many mechanisms to hide the downtrodden today that we turn a blind eye to it, and that gives us the false impression that the economy is as great as it is. And then when you look at the increase in prices, when you look at the precipitous decline, people say, "Oh, well, wages go up every year," but not at the rate of the inflation, not at the rate of costs going up. You know, oh, if you make $10 more a week, but your food bill is $50 more a week, you're in a $40 deficit. People don't see that because they say, "Oh, well, the numbers go up." We're in a bad position.
Very
right
bad.
now. Very bad position.
We've had, in the space of roughly 2 years, we've had a 16% increase in inflation. We've had a 12% increase in food inflation by themselves. We've had a 60% increase in energy costs in 2 years. We've guaranteed that there will be another 7.5% increase in inflation by January 1st of 2025. People don't, but when you mention the numbers, when you do the math, people tune out
Well,
because they go, "Well, that's hard."
I
Feels like.
was forced to do some math the other day because the transmission in my truck exploded on me.
Mhm.
All right. Now, my truck is I drive a 1991. Yeah, I'm going to date it. A 1991 Chevy Silverado.
Mhm.
It's a 2-door, long bed, 2-wheel drive pickup truck that at the time in 1991, when it was produced, it was actually rolled off the assembly line the week I graduated high school, oddly enough. My truck had every bell and whistle in it: electric door locks, electric windows, AM, FM stereo cassette, and cruise control and air conditioning. That was the list of options that was in my truck. I have the sticker for that truck. It was $14,000 in 1991. That was my truck, a
Yeah.
fully loaded
Crazy.
truck, $14,000. I have the sticker on the shelf next to me. I was sitting there debating, do I spend $2,000 on getting this transmission fixed, or do I just bite the bullet now and say, maybe I should just buy myself a brand new truck? And I weighed all my options, and I said, well, if I want to get a truck that does what my truck does, what is it going to cost me? Well,
50.
you can't get a truck. My truck right now would be considered bare bones. It would be
Right.
considered because there's no luxury, no amenities in my truck, electric windows and door locks. That's it. Now you got parking sensors, eyesight, anti-lock brakes, dual airbags, side curtain airbags, side impact door protection. You got
Navigation.
navigation. You got this. You got all of these different
Mhm.
things. And I
Right.
said to myself,
And a lot of it's mandated by government.
because every time they have a technology that's out there that they say, well, this is going to make your truck safer or your car safer, the government mandates it.
Mhm.
Well, that technology adds $5,000 to the price of the car. You
At
just
least.
mandated a whole section of people out of the market because of what is I looked at the least expensive. I said, I need a full-size pickup truck because I'm a big guy. I need a full-size pickup truck. I want a full-length bed. I only want 2-wheel drive because I live in North Carolina. I don't have to worry about snow. And I want to be able to tow 7,000 pounds. $39,000 is for the lowest price pickup truck I could find, full size, and it doesn't do what I need it to do. That's with a 4-cylinder engine in it, one of those EcoBoost kind of motor type things, right?
Yeah, of course.
But it's got air conditioning, electric brakes, anti-lock brake, power windows.
What was that? Something blow
It'll
up there?
stop in a minute. I have my air compressor. I was filling up tires yesterday.
Oh.
It'll stop momentarily.
Yeah, but I'm not surprised. You've got all the wonderful bells and whistles mandated by government that aren't really necessary
There it goes.
for life. They're
Right,
just what the government says you got to have.
Right, but I'm looking at these trucks, and I'm saying to myself, I don't give a shit about all this technology in it. I know how to park. I don't need lane assist. I don't need to worry about how far I am against, to the guy in front of me that I need to have radar on my truck or anything. If I'm a farmer and all I need is a pickup truck, so I could throw 3 bales of hay in it to drive out into the middle of my field and feed my cows, what do I need with anti-lock brakes and parking sensors?
In some instances, you have no choice. You have to buy the technology because it's demanded. You have to build the trucks and the cars with all the technology that you don't necessarily need.
Yeah, they price you out of everything. But 20 years ago, 30 years ago, when my truck was bought, you had the option for roll-up windows. You had the option for manual door locks. You didn't have to have a radio. You didn't have to have power steering. You didn't have to have an air conditioner. You could buy that truck, because I looked at what the baseline of that truck was, and it would have been the GMC version of it, and it was $11,000. For the same truck, it was $11,000. Mine just happened to have all the current bells and whistles at the time, so it jacked the price up to 16, 17. But you can't order a bare bones vehicle anymore. You can't say, hey, listen, I just want vinyl seats. I just need a vinyl bench seat. I'm hauling garbage from my house. I'm hauling plant debris. I'm hauling cow manure. Whatever the hell it is, I just need something I don't have to worry about getting beat up, scratched up, dented up, tearing up the upholstery, or anything else. I don't want to worry about if my powered windows motors don't work, or if my switch is short out, or if a fuse blows. I just want something simple. You can't get it.
Because the false message of safety has a cost. There is always a cost for this comfort, the comforts that are being thrown in to basically pull the wool over the public's eyes to make you feel like everything's good and you're comfy and you feel everything's convenient. There are costs to these things.
Well, part of why I'm talking about this is because how many times have you heard me say that part of the reason why we're in the shape we're in is because Americans haven't felt pain.
Yeah.
Americans have forgotten what pain feels like. We don't really know, because the poorest among us are still among the richest in the world.
Absolutely.
And here's the thing. We've desensitized ourselves to pain. We're feeling the pain. We feel the pain every time we go to the grocery store. We feel the pain every time we go to the gas pump. We feel the pain every time we buy fuel for our heat, our heaters in our homes. We feel the pain every time we go pay the electric bill. But we've desensitized ourselves.
Well, the thing is, even though we make certain we feel the pain, but we haven't made sacrifices. People have gotten to the point where even the most mundane thing has to be convenient and comfortable and not cause us any hardship. We forget what basics is like. We forgot what the basics are. And people aren't living like that. When the poorest people in the country still have 52-inch flat screen TVs and air conditioning.
Oh, that's because they can just go to Walmart and take it.
Well, yeah, they can do that. But because that and so many people are subsidized by the government, if the government wasn't subsidizing pain, so to make everybody comfortable, people would understand how much worse it is, because there was a time when the government couldn't do that, when the government wasn't there to write the check for everybody.
If I remember the number correctly, last time I was looking it up, I believe 159 million Americans receive some form of payment from the United States government. They're being subsidized.
That's over 33% of our population.
That's 40%. We have 330 million people, and 150 million of them are on the dole in one capacity or another. And then we look at the corporate welfare that goes into all the rest.
They're too big to fail.
Such a crazy idea. And very unconstitutional, massively unconstitutional.
it's so damn frightening, that the working people in this country that pay the bills, we
Well,
just
the
keep
founders used to say, once the American people realize that they can pay themselves with their own tax money,
they can be brought. Well, it was once the politicians realize they can bribe the taxpayers with their own money, they'll never find themselves out of power.
right? And that's exactly what we're having happen today.
Right. And as long as we can keep printing the money and not have to worry about paying it back
And-
to anybody at any time, everybody
And
gets free.
here's the thing, okay? You said 40% of America is depending upon subsidies from the government.
Of some type or another, yes.
Okay. Well, I'm going to go beyond that. And that number is a whole lot higher than what people think it is. Okay. That's just the ones that are getting directly paid subsidies. The ones that are indirectly through PPP loans and various grant programs and all this other stuff that's given to businesses and so forth for payroll and business expansions and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Hiring minorities, blah, blah. Yes.
Yeah. That number goes up a whole lot higher.
Well, just remember, no matter how high the number is of Americans getting subsidized by the federal government, just remember that 100% of the federal government is subsidized by the taxpayer.
Yeah, we're the ones ultimately paying for it all. And of course, that's a problem because we can't afford this crap. There's no way we can afford it. I mean,
All right, let's guys. Tonight. I think we're gonna try and stick to a 2-hour show. I'm exhausted. Rich is exhausted. We both had a very long day today. I'm sure you guys are probably steaming it up where you guys do. It's hot as shit outside.
humid.
We got 15 minutes before 11 o'clock. If you guys want to go longer, that's fine too. I don't give a damn. Word came out yesterday that it seems that Hunter Biden will be indicted by the 29th of September.
Okay.
Finally.
Well, I'll believe it when I actually see it happening.
Well, no, I'm not even worried about it. I think it'll happen. What's he going to be indicted on?
Yes, that's
Right,
the question.
that's-
That's the question. The real question is,
Are they going to indict him on jaywalking or what he actually did?
They're going to indict him because he spit on the sidewalk when he was 2.
You know?
No, that they would indict Trump for that.
Well, yes. But,
They
I
would
mean,
indict Trump for that.
The indictment I want to hear about is the gun charges. All of the gun charges. And there are many gun charges that he needs to be indicted for if we're talking about any kind of fairness about this. And then there needs to be a full investigation, which they purportedly have done. There's actually 400 charges that the FBI have investigated and can be charged against Hunter Biden as of a year ago. And they're talking about 3. No matter what they do, this is a joke.
Well, all I know is that there's also speculation right now. I've heard it from some people that I know, and they said that there's right now allegedly a couple of tapes. You know how I've never been involved with my son's business dealings, and he's the most upstanding man I've ever met, and I'm not the big guy.
Yeah,
We know that there was a text message that said, "My father is in the room with me. I need an answer now." We know that those text messages exist.
there was a letter and an email as well, and not
Right.
including the ones that were under his alias.
Well, from what I'm understanding, and it hasn't been released, but they're saying it will be released sometime before October, that there is conclusive proof of Joe Biden himself orchestrating a shakedown.
Well, that would explain why Kamala this week was out talking about how she's ready to step in for Joe based on his health, something she has not said up until this moment. She has not mentioned anything about his health or replacing him throughout the entire time since January 21st. She's never mentioned that until this week.
There's something in the mix that I'm hearing. A couple of sources, people that I know that have said that they've read a couple of transcripts, but they're not at liberty to say because it is so detrimental that it's basically him demanding his cut, and from what I understand, it's with a conversation with another world leader.
Wouldn't surprise me. He was so confident that he was bragging about his strong arming of the Ukraine and their attorney general, and he thought it was something to brag about. So this is a man who thought he was untouchable, still believes he's untouchable.
Well, the crux of it is the fact that these recordings that have been made were when he was vice president. And from what I understand, there was another certain somebody in the room at the time that these recordings were made in some office that's sort of elliptical in shape. And
could it be some Hawaiian guy?
It's some long-legged Mac Daddy. I don't know. Well, to coin the phrase of my friend Pastor Manning, a long-legged Mac Daddy. But apparently, there was 2 world leaders and a vice president in this conversation.
Wouldn't surprise me. Again, this could be the reason why we heard Kamala suddenly talking about her stepping in. But at the same time, I am sure that we will also see, depending on who's releasing, if those tapes are to come out, the source, 9 out of 10, if it's not the New York Times or MSNBC, which I don't think it will be, then they're going to instantly come out and say, this is fake. Just like we heard 2 years ago.
Well, they're gonna try and claim it but from what I understand, the source material itself, it's gonna get to the point where it doesn't matter who releases it; it's going to be undeniable.
I would love to see that.
This is supposed to be something that is, it is the ultimate. It is the ultimate expression of government corruption, captured in one audio tape, and maybe more than just audio. I'm not sure, but
see, if there's video, yes, it's undeniable. If it's audio alone,
they'll get blamed on AI. It's going to be claimed to be a deep fake.
Well, the scenario, from what I'm hearing, is that the proof is offered in audio, but then is validated on video in a separate conversation that once you put the 2 of them together, it makes it irrefutable. So this is what I'm saying. Now, this might be a reason why old Joe has been acting a little bit more forgetful lately and acting a little stranger in recent days than he has been.
How would you notice?
One being the Congressional Medal of Honor ceremony that took place. Well, first,
insulting.
First, Jill now has COVID. 13 times vaccinated, mask wearing, keeping to herself in her garden. Jill Biden now has COVID again. Yeah. And Joe has been keeping her distance from the First Lady.
Let's not forget, that's Dr. Jill Biden.
Doctor Jill Biden.
Doctorate, not doctor. She has a doctorate. She's not a doctor.
Oh, no, she's a doctor. You must address her as such. But we saw what happened at the Congressional Medal of Honor ceremony. Joe pins the medal on the gentleman who received it, whose name I happened to swipe. I don't remember the gentleman's name. And in there's a whole process with the CMH,
Mhm.
you know, and part of it is like, if it was a church service, you would call it a benediction.
Mhm.
You know, it would be like, you know, there would be
It is a
reading.
benediction.
Well, Joe puts the medal on the guy,
Mhm.
turns around, and then walks off the friggin' stage
Yeah,
and walks out of the room.
insulting.
The first thing that we get from them is,
COVID.
well, the president he's masking indoors again. The president is masking again, and he wanted to limit his exposure to the people in the room, so he left, so he wouldn't expose himself to. Well, he likes to expose himself, but he didn't want to be exposed to the people in the room
Too late.
in case he may have still yet to test positive, because he is living with the first lady. He might carry it and not have symptoms yet, so he didn't want to be around these people, so he leaves. Michael pointed out in the conversation off the air that, what did you say, Michael? They said that they something with the videotape.
There are some that are trying to claim that it was a jump cut and that Biden actually stayed there for the entire ceremony.
Right. And
Okay,
so,
but in looking at things further, there are too many sources corroborating the fact that he did leave directly after putting the Medal of Honor on
Yeah.
the gentleman that was receiving it.
so the question would be, why would the White House press secretary, press corps, come out and say he left the ceremony because he didn't want to expose anybody to potential contamination from COVID? If he stayed for the duration, he wouldn't have had to make that excuse if he stayed for the duration, but he left.
They want confusion in the American public, so they don't know. Theoretically, they don't know what to believe, but there is a overwhelming preponderance of evidence from multiple credible sources internationally that are telling us very clearly, no, he just walked out the room. It was an insult. It was disgraceful, and it's real.
Mhm.
Well,
And here's the other thing. Okay, if he's trying to limit his exposure, okay, you have a gentleman up there that was the recipient who was 87 years old.
Yep.
Not masked,
Yep.
not screened,
Right.
nothing. And here's Joe Biden, less than 6 inches away from him, not masked. Okay,
Well, yeah.
come on. That
What better
doesn't add up.
What
Yeah,
better way to honor your CMH recipient than to give him the deadliest virus on the
Yeah.
face of the earth?
Give them COVID.
Now, Jacqueline says the press secretary said that it was planned that he would walk away. She attests that it's his senility. I, on the other hand, look at it a little differently. These instances of his forgetfulness, his confusion, his walking away, and everything else, I'm going to tell you what it's about. Look up the name Vincent the Chin Gigante. And I'm going to, this is old school Brooklyn here. This is old school Brooklyn. Vinny the Chin Gigante, head of one of the crime families in New York, right? How did Vinny the Chin try to get away with not getting prosecuted? He tried to play senile, and he used to walk around Brooklyn. And everything in a bathrobe in the middle of the daytime. He wouldn't shave for a week. He'd have his hat on crooked. He'd have two mismatched slippers, and he'd walk around in his bathrobe. And then he'd go back into his house. And as soon as he went back into his house, they had him tapped, and he's talking to all of his underbosses about who to whack next. All right. What you're seeing, Joe, what's you seeing happening right now, and this is gonna be my prognostication, is that Joe is suffering from an immediate an untimely mental collapse, a mental demise that's going to force him to vacate the throne and hand it to Kamala, the Ugandan giant. No, that's a different Kamala. Yeah, Kamala. So this way, when his son is forced to turn state's evidence against his father for the corruption, Joe can claim that he's too mentally incapacitated to stand trial.
Unfit to stand trial. Yep. Absolutely. Sounds like a good plan.
That's an interesting way of looking at it. I don't think they really have a choice because I think that he is mentally deficient at this point, that he has been deteriorating before the American public for quite some time now. And so, do I think they are devious enough to do that? Sure. But I don't think they have a choice. The man's not there. I do believe it was senile. And just to clarify, the press secretary, Karine, is coming up with the excuse after the fact. Here's the way you know that's not true. That event, the Medal of Honor, or anything with the president, has a schedule of minutes that are given to the press ahead of time,
down to the second.
To every second, so that the press will be able to cover it, report it, and to take their photos and get the shots, so that everything is planned out in detail. If he was going to leave early, it would be in the the memo sent out to the press corps saying, and then the president will be leaving because of XYZ, unless there's an emergency in America, kind of like when we saw with President Bush talking to the children, and then someone comes over,
9/11 attack,
the 9/11, and comes over, talks to him, and then he excuses himself at the soonest available moment. That's the case where you have an exception, and everyone goes, "Where's the president going?" It's because something just happened. The only time a president leaves, this kind of orchestrated event is either an emergency, or you get Joe Biden just rambling off because it wasn't on his cue card.
Well, again, I don't. All right, listen. Is Joe Biden suffering from cognitive decline? Probably yes. To the extent that you think, no.
Yes.
No. I think this is another don't let a crisis go to waste moment. And they say, well, everybody, look, the guy's 107. They know he's not going to be as sharp as attack. They know he's not going to be quick. So let's use that to our advantage so that when enough shit starts coming out to show how corrupt the guy is, we can just have him play on it a little bit, exaggerate things a little bit, so he could leave office gracefully, citing cognitive decline, saying, listen, Mr. and Mrs. America, I don't think I'm up to the job. I'm not as sharp as I used to be. And then he starts drooling and eating baby food and everything else. And now he's walking around the rose garden in his bathrobe. I think they're using the idea that people believe he has cognitive decline to an extent that he probably does, and are going to exaggerate it. They could either play it two ways. Let him continue going on the route that he is, being controlled by somebody else. And people say, well, what are you going to do? He's 143 years old. It's the way 143-year-olds are. Or it starts getting so bad that they got to get him out of there. And he says, all right, listen, I'm going to play the Vinny the Chin card now. I got to get out of here because I don't want to spend the last remaining years of my life in a cell. Let me get out of here. I'll play the cognitive decline. We'll put Kamala in there. She finishes out the term. I go back to Delaware. I walk around. I walk around feeding, fertilizer to my fake plant in front of the press, so they think I'm completely gone, and then I won't stand trial. They're going to say, "Well, you're not going to put a 183-year-old man on trial who's blowing bubbles. We're not going to do that. Leave him be. Leave him be. Let him live out the rest of his life." That's what's happening here. He's playing the cognitive decline card so he could avoid being prosecuted.
No, I mean, yes, they're going to pile everything on this. I think it's absolutely natural. And they're going to pile everything on, absolutely, so that when he goes, everything goes with him. Every issue, every question, every problem, it walks out the door with him when he goes. And you can't blame him because he's got a disability. And if you say something about that, well, you're just an evil racist, you're ageist, you're ableist, you're a problem. You can't blame him. They're going to throw all of it on him as he walks out the door. They're just taking advantage of the opportunity as it exists. I do want to mention that 9/11 is coming up. And I know I'm jumping gears here, but
No,
'cause
that's
we're
all right.
really-
Jan brought it up, and that was already
Yeah.
something that we were going to speak about anyway.
Yeah. And so, like many people know, that 9/11, obviously, 22 years ago, and yet it is still impacting our nation. We were talking about one of the impacts earlier, talking about the Patriot Act, talking about the secret courts and secret trials. We have people who have grown up and have never known in America where there wasn't a Patriot Act, where there weren't secret courts with secret trials that no one knew about, that have been negatively impacting people's lives, that the government has been recording every one of our keystrokes and checking everything that we're doing, like the location in Utah that we know has petabytes. I mean, it's ridiculous how much information they're taking from us. The impact of 9/11 is going to continue to affect us. We cannot underestimate that. And it is shocking because it is so, it's made to feel so commonplace. Just to mention, on Monday, 9/11, there's going to be an event. I don't know if a lot of people may not be aware. There's going to be 4 Marines. Me and 3 other Marines are going to be doing a live stream on Monday at 9 o'clock, talking about our experience with 9/11, how it's affected this nation up to date, and how it's going to affect us going forward. I do recommend people, you can check out my channel. You'll see the link for it. But we need to talk about this.
Put the link on the O1F page as well, Mike.
Okay.
And we'll.
I didn't want to presume.
No, you do that. You put it on there. It'll go to all 57 pages.
Yep. And I want everyone to. We need to have these conversations. It's not just dead history that's over. It's living history. It's still affecting us, and we can't forget about the thousands of Americans that not just died that day, but have continued to be killed as a consequence of that, which I would say is a number well into the tens of thousands at this point. It's truly heartbreaking.
Well, for me, on a personal note, I was in upstate New York when 9/11 happened, and it took just about a week for me to get in contact with my brothers, both of whom were at ground zero. One of my brothers was in building 7 as it came down, and luckily just managed to survive. Guys that he was on the job with didn't. I lost 13 friends and coworkers. My neighborhood in Brooklyn, the Diker Heights section of Bay Ridge, per capita, suffered the most amount of loss on 9/11. It was something like every single block within that area of Brooklyn averaged 2 people lost. My community was devastated. Outside of St. Ephraim's Church in Brooklyn, which is the largest church in that neighborhood, is a statue that probably everybody has seen of Jesus Christ holding in his hands the World Trade Center. That's at St. Ephraim's. In the 22 years since 9/11, I have not been able to go to the site. Not because there was a physical barrier, but because there's an emotional barrier. Uh, I was supposed to be employed in that building on that day. Had the cards turned a little differently, I would have been there. The only solace I had to that day was that Peter Soma that you see on the show.
Mhm.
It took a lot for me to get in touch with Peter. Peter spent all day on 9/11 shuttling people in and out of New York City after that happened with his car, loaded with people, getting them out of the city, getting people into the city that needed to get to ground zero, getting people out of the city that needed to get out. He did what he could do. And it wasn't until the sigh of relief that I felt, because I know where Peter worked in New York City. The sigh of relief I felt knowing that my brother was good, because Peter is my brother, and that was my only real saving grace that day, was that there was somebody that I thought was gone that wasn't. And for people that don't live in the boroughs, for people don't live in the tri-state area, the people that don't live right there that are impacted with it, it always feels to them like it's something distant. It didn't happen in their backyard. It didn't happen to people that they knew. It didn't happen in their community. Parts of New York City, parts of New Jersey, Staten Island, Queens, the Bronx, where all of these people worked. These are scars that are never going to heal. They're always going to be felt, because that's 3,000 lives that were immediately taken. Children that'll never see a parent, parents that'll never see a child, husbands never see a wife, wives never see a husband. And on September 12th, everywhere you looked, you saw the American flag fly. And there was a tremendous feeling of sadness in this country, but there was also a tremendous feeling of brotherhood and sisterhood. And
Unification.
the country was one. The worst things that terrorists could have done to themselves was to hurt Americans, because it brought Americans together. The worst things that Americans could do to themselves was allowing our government to tear us back apart. And we need to get back to that sense of our blood is not red. It's red, white, and blue. And each of us under that banner, no matter where you're from, no matter what your proclivities are, you share the same freedoms, and you need to respect those freedoms. And you have to learn and remember that there's more that keeps us together than keeps us apart. And even on opposite sides of the spectrum, we need to help defend one another, because there are people that they don't care if you're left wing or right wing. They just know that you're not one of them. And like I said, it's a great big party and we are not invited. Maybe we should start throwing our own party and not invite other people. Get back to being Americans.
Yep. Okay. As most of you know, I currently live up in upstate New York. When 9/11 happened, I was actually working on a farm in Iowa. And when I got the news, I couldn't hardly believe it. I could not believe that somebody would carry out this heinous of an attack on the United States. But as Frank said, on September 12th, everywhere I looked, everywhere I went, you saw people flying the American flag. And this is in rural Iowa. So, yeah, we may have not it may have seemed surreal to us and so forth, but that doesn't mean that we weren't as much a part of the brotherhood of American citizens as everybody else. And that was from coast to coast. It wasn't just New York, New Jersey. It was coast to coast. We all came together. I know right after 9/11 happened, every recruiting office across the nation was flooded with people wanting to join the military. Every recruiting station. Okay. When we get knocked down, we do come together. And the thing is here we are, we're allowing our government to knock us down. Why don't we have that same resilience against them?
No, probably because the enemy looks like us, all of us.
Yeah.
The enemy speaks our language. The enemy uses our currency, and unfortunately, the enemy's writing our laws. I mean, that's part of the problem.
Big part.
Okay, we are better than this. And we get the government that we deserve. And the thing is because we refuse to be involved, we are seeing the government that we do deserve. Now, if you want to change that, if you want to start putting this nation back on the right course, join a constitutional forward organization like the Liberty First Foundation, the Cato Institute, 10th Amendment Center, the Constitution Center, and there's numerous other ones. Okay? Right now, we are in our membership drive, and we would love to have you as a member of the Liberty First Foundation. We are also working on some things to start holding our government more accountable. Okay, and it's going to be a lot more than just what you see here every week from us. But in order for us to be able to do these types of things, we need your help. We need you guys to step up to the plate and help us. Okay? We did not get here overnight, and it has cost a lot of money to put us in the positions that we are in. It's also going to cost a lot of money to bring us out of the position that we are in. Okay? We can't do it without you.
You know how whenever a sports team wins a championship and all the fans go, "We won." Well, the fans didn't win. The team won. If we start winning battles and you want to be one of the people that says we won, be part of the team.
Yeah.
Don't just be part of the fan. Be part of the team. We need you to help us out. We're doing what we can, but we need help doing it.
We have multiple legal strategies that we are currently working on. And as we put these together and get them more solidified, we will be making announcements as to what those are going to be. But
we kind of
these will start making an impact on writing the course of this nation. And that's why we need your help. Okay? We can't afford the lawyers on our own.
Sure.
Okay.
Right. I'm gonna sign off for me. Rich, you want to say anything before we you and I get out of here?
Yeah, just want to, thanks for having me. I didn't speak much, but, it was nice participating. And maybe next time around, I'll have a little bit more to say.
Thanks for being on, Rich.
Always happy to have you.
We wanted to have Rich shit on New Jersey, but he lives there.
Yeah, I still.
So we couldn't have him do that. Oh, listen, we're gonna get out of here. Our better halves are inside with coffee and cake waiting for us. We're going to sign off as always. You guys be safe and shoot straight. We're going to leave you to the team of Mike and Mike, and we'll catch you guys next week. And remember, on Monday, when you guys wake up, look up, thank God that you're still here. If you see a veteran, thank them for the free air that's in your lungs, because without them, we wouldn't have it. So we'll catch you guys next week. Fun stuff next week, I promise.
Good night.
Oh,
Catch you guys later.
All
Have
right.
a good night.
night, Frank. Night, Rich. Okay. With that, we're going to go ahead and wrap up our show. We really can't follow up with anything else. It would be disrespectful to the memory of the folks that did tragically lose their lives on that fateful day.
Yeah.
So thank you everybody for tuning in. Thank you for the people in the chat. We do appreciate your input into the conversation. Michael, thank you. And we will be looking forward to your broadcast on Monday. And with that, we will see you next week. We're here every Friday night, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. And we do encourage you to invite your friends to join us. Please like and share, comment, and subscribe. We'll see you all next week.
Bye, everyone.